record this as well. I do believe that I'm recording. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm very appreciative of all your energy. There's so many beautiful faces, so much beautiful energy in here. I am Josh. I also go by Animal. Animal is my music name that I kind of use as an alias. And I've been making music for the last pretty much 3 years. Haven't always gone by Animal. The name Animal comes from Anomaly, which is the original name that I started off with, and then realized that there was a lot of anomalies in the world. So I took off the Y and happened to get lucky enough. There wasn't anybody with that trademark. So that is how I became Animal. And kind of around the same time as when I stumbled across 528 Hertz, which is what I'll be talking about today. And I have a couple resources for what 528 is, but in a nutshell, 528 is the frequency of our heart, and it is the frequency of love. I would like to preface what I'm saying today. Please use discernment when listening to kind of this discussion I'll be opening up, and I can direct everybody to the place that I've gotten my research, which is the Book of 528, written by Dr. Leonard Horowitz, who is a part of our wave community so amazingly. But I stumbled across Dr. Horowitz after I had probably spent like a month or two getting introduced to 528. And once I stumbled across that book, it was pretty obvious that I really needed to add my voice to this movement and do the best that I could to the best of my ability to spread awareness and kind of be a messenger for what this frequency is and what it stands for, and the potential that it brings to this planet in so many ways, so many different industries. And so I will kind of move in. I'm going to share my screen just a little bit, kind of on and off, to introduce you to the cover of the Book of 528 as can't necessarily give it to you, but if you are interested in anything that you see on this is available for I think $10 on a Kindle. But if I share my screen right now, you can see this, hopefully. This is the cover of the Book of 528. And the reason I wanted to show this is it also introduces both the solfeggio scale, which is kind of the primordial creative frequencies of our universe. But Dr. Horowitz kind of found an extended solfeggio scale because the original there's only original 6 on the original solfeggio, but Dr. Horowitz found a pattern to extend it to 9, and using that 9 kind of perfect circle of sound, as he deemed it, that is what is encapsulated within the circle and also on the cover. And I will also be speaking about that too, so that's why I wanted to introduce this. But if I scroll down here a little bit, I can give just a brief introduction to kind of what 528 is in the words of Dr. Horowitz. So we're getting it directly from where the book is. But this is still an introduction. If you'd like to dive further into this book, again, it's available on Amazon, hard copy and Kindle. I've also read this book on my YouTube channel, and it is all in a playlist if you're interested. But essentially, 528 Hertz is linked to the heart of everything. It is playing at the heart of the original solfeggio musical scale. It is fundamental to phi, pi, golden mean, and all sacred geometry, including circles, squares, arches, and architecture. It is the greenish yellow vibration of your heart chakra, required for space-time measurements. It is crucial to the mile with 5,280 feet. It is needed to determine the speed of light, constructive to E equals mc squared, since energy, mass, and light all depend on it. It is paramount to water, structuring in the form of a tetrahedron. It is the key to the heart of God, reconciling the triune God, creator, water, and the Holy Spirit as beneficent, life-giving, and constructive. It's the key to the house of David, reflecting the shape of Solomon's seal, and water, active as an amulet generating positive or protective power, which you can see kind of right back here. I don't know if you can fully go into this, but this is Metatron's cube, which is also reflected in Solomon's seal and can also be seen right here as the symbol for our heart chakra. It is central to the Genesis command, let there be light. 528 is also broadcast by the sun and Jupiter. It is resonating the heart of rainbows and snowflakes. It is celebrated throughout the botanical world in the pigment chlorophyll, and it is the reason that grass is green, having the same chemical and geometric structure. It is structuring your hemoglobin and adding love to the prana, to the breath of life. It is linked to the positive, heartfelt emotions, love, faith, joy, bravery, emotions, energy, and motion that are fundamentally vibrating electrons resonating at 528. And it is the miracle note of the universe. And the reason that this me is emphasized, kind of using that to transport us into the next part, is if we go back up just to the top, I don't think he has a full scale image of this, but each note on the solfeggio scale kind of has its own Latin word. So if I stop the screen share and bring it back here, we'll screen share in just a little bit again. But me is the name for 528. For those of you who are at the festival, you heard me introduce it in that way. But the solfeggio scale goes back so much farther than humanity can probably conceptualize. But do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do is the solfeggio. Ironic how that rhymes. And it is so ancient to the point where it's been coded into the Lord's Prayer, when Yeshua was the first original 7 lines that are through that were to code the solfeggio scale and kind of code our chakra points. And it's also coded into St. John's hymn, or St. John the Baptist hymn, which is said to be one of the most spiritually uplifting songs ever created. It was also sung in the solfeggio notes. So these frequencies are extremely powerful in so many other ways. And for lack of a long story, kind of what Dr. Horowitz says is that these frequencies are the houses of our energy centers, or kind of how Eastern philosophy refers to as chakras. They are the frequencies that hold the energy together of each one of those points, 528 being the heart frequency. So there is this term that I've been, that's introduced in the book, that I've also been kind of experimenting with frequencies, that is mi, miracle, mixed with fa, which stands for family, putting them together being the miracle family, which is 528 and 639 linked together, kind of like creating a link in the middle of the solfeggio, the original 6, which creates kind of a link between your lower energy centers and your higher energy centers, kind of all dimensions of your body. And that can be done using frequency interactions and using those vibrations to create integers, like mathematical equations, through those frequency interactions within a time-space environment that allow for a plethora of different things. But specifically the 528 and 639 is a very miraculous and kind of divine experience, which is something I'm still kind of experimenting with, and will probably be in my next teaching, as I have something I learned a little bit longer ago to share today. But to kind of move out of these first concepts, I guess I'll ask if anybody has questions about those things I just introduced. I know that there's a whole lot of information, and you know, a lot of it is, so if anybody was, if there's any like trigger or anything that happened to that, I would highly recommend looking up this book and reading it thoroughly. It's not just like a one-time read. There's a lot of things that build on top of each other in different industries that kind of create this this concept. And so I can type it here. It's called The Book of 528, and it is written by Dr. Leonard Horowitz. And Dr. Leonard Horowitz is a Harvard graduate. He is also the leading author in the world of the pharmaceutical industry. He used to work in the pharmaceutical industry and realized how corrupt it was, brought it to his boss, and then was fired, and has had multiple death threats, and has even heard about a very high group of people that did not want him on this planet. And he found out about that through a couple of his intelligence friends. But he's been very well versed in exposing a lot of stuff that goes on, whether that's pharmaceutical, the food industry, a lot of stuff. So I'd highly recommend checking out his book, whether it's this book or even kind of anything else that he's done, because he's done a lot of work in this realm. And this is something he started 25 years ago in 1996. But if there aren't any questions on that stuff, we will kind of keep moving in. I wanted to give a brief synopsis of what Dr. Horowitz also introduces in the book, just to build us into why 528 is so important for, I mean, whether you're a musician or not, why 528 is so important. Why does it hurt people sometimes? So I think I'm going to take that question and use that to transition into what I'm about to talk about, and remind me to get back to that, because it'll take a little bit to build into that. But so essentially, the reason that this isn't public knowledge, that we don't tune our music to 528 right now, that not a lot of people know about this, is it's been hidden quite obviously, and this kind of started around the same time that frequencies were being researched and being picked up on. So kind of the early 1900s, when World War I was happening, when we were first being able to communicate across seas. That's when the Navy was really in control. When you speak softly with a big stick, they're all going around communicating through radio waves. And during that time, the Navy partnered with RCA, which is Radio Corporation of America, which they control like radio airwaves, but they've also bridged into the music world, and they own a bunch of recording labels, studios, production labels, mastering labels. So they have a very big control over a lot of the frequency industry, that being radio and music and technology. So as they're coming into this awareness of how important frequencies were, kind of building off of a lot of Nikola Tesla's work that he had kind of shown, they started to do research, kind of low-key research about frequency manipulation and how to manipulate frequencies to cause harm, mass amounts of harm, how to create controlling mindsets, how to broadcast it from one specific place and shoot it halfway across the world and have it still have the same effect, how to manipulate sound effects so that they created harm. Like very, very vast research. They spent a good, I'd say 15 years looking into this stuff and testing it. And kind of the pinnacle of that research ended up becoming what is now the ISO, International Standard Organization of Musical Tuning, which was instituted in 1939 by the Nazi Prime Minister, Joseph Goebbels. And he went from Germany, and I think they met in France. I could be wrong, but it was between, this kind of communication between Germany and Britain before Hitler had invaded Poland. So it's kind of like a way to create maybe a cease arms or some type of peace. But I mean, quite literally, the Nazi Prime Minister is the reason that we tune our music today to what we tune it to. And since that day, our music has been tuned to 440 Hertz. So Elvis, I mean, all the way from Elvis all the way up to today, all of our music has been dissonantly tuned with the intent to harm us and keep us out of our universal body and out of our natural tuning. And not to dive super far into it, but just a quick reason about why 440 Hertz is dissonant. So like I said, they did a lot of research, and I won't say his name, but Dr. Horowitz has pinpointed the exact person who figured this out. That is a part of, I'd say, the malevolent agenda. And they came up with this 440 Hertz concept where, so going back to the solfeggio notes, those being our energy center notes, 440 Hertz, so if you imagine like a really big piano I only have this keyboard. You can't even see it because of my penguin. But the way you tune a piano is you tune the fourth A on the piano. And for some reason, that's what the ISO and humans have decided that we're going to tune our music based off of, is the fourth A on the piano. So this A4 is 440 Hertz, because that's been standardized since 1939. But when A4 is 440 Hertz, then that makes F sharp 5, so the F sharp right above that A, that turns it to 740.99 Hertz, which is 0.01 Hertz off of the frequency of our third eye. And it tunes C5, which is a note I'll bring up in a little bit. It tunes it to 523 Hertz. So it tunes us really close to our mind and really far away from our heart. And ironically, the relationship between our heart frequency and our third eye frequency, 528 and 741, is that of a tritone, or the devil's interval, the devil's tone. And that's something that back in the Baroque period, if you played a tritone, which is an augmented sixth, you could be potentially killed because of how dissonant it was and how it was like taboo to not play this frequency, or not play these two frequencies together because of how dissonant it could be. Like you could, if you were put in a room and a tritone was shot into the room and you were in there for long enough, you could die because of how intense that frequency is, and those interactions together. So essentially, we using this 440 Hertz tuning since 1939, we have been tuned out of our heart into our mind using the devil's tone in order to orchestrate mind control, keeping us in our mind and pushing us out of our heart, literally making us not want to go into our heart because of how dissonantly tuned it is, and forcing us kind of up here. And the first rollout of this system was what we saw in Nazi Germany, as again, the Nazi prime minister was the one who introduced this. And Hitler's kind of regime was the first rollout of it. And then following World War II, it became standardized, well, during World War II, and then Britain picked it up, Western world picked it up. And it's just become what it is as the music industry kind of took hold of the thing that they did. So I just saw a question about 432 Hertz. We will get into that in just a second. But to go back to your question, Becca, of why does it hurt so badly, is pretty much our generations and our parents' generations have been forcefully detuned out of our heart. So when we hear the natural universal frequency of our heart, it's painful. It hurts because we are not in alignment with it. And we are moving back into alignment with that energy center, moving back into a phase lock with this energy center, and phase locking both of our mind and our heart, because the only time that the devil is good is when you have love for that entity and there's a benevolent interaction between, because there's no good and bad, there is just the middle. And the only time that this is a harmonious relationship between 528 and 741 is when you are completely in alignment with it. And to get to that alignment, we also need to be changing our musical tuning, along with all the other things that are being introduced in this festival with eating. And I mean, there's so many other places that this applies to, but music is a very big thing that a lot of us consume. And when we're listening to music that's in 440 Hertz, we're literally getting pushed into our mind and getting pushed out of our heart, even though our heart may resonate with what's going on in the song and with the words and all of that. It's the literal pitch of what's going on. So to quickly dive into 432, because I saw that, this is something that creates a little dissonance, and I would recommend even looking more into this if this creates some type of dissonance in you, or if you have a dissonant reaction. So the reason that I take the stance that I do on 432, and I've kind of taken a stance on TikTok, that's how I've gotten a decent amount of followers. That was not the reason why I did it, but it was because I think that this is an important message, specifically in this time of spiritual awakening. So as as these people in control, as I'll just leave it at that, as they started to set up this frequency manipulation matrix back in the early 1900s, and as they prepped to have this continually roll out, they knew that we would wake up to this and that we would become conscious of this, or there'd at least be some people who would go, oh, we're not tuned right. So they had a backup plan, essentially. And in my opinion, again, if this is dissonant with you, please do research. My opinion is that their backup plan is 432 Hertz. And the reason for this is 432 doesn't tune you to any solfeggio note. So like I said, 440 Hertz tunes you up in your mind. And like I get into in a little bit, I'll tell you how we can tune into our heart. But 432 doesn't tune us to any energy center on that universal solfeggio note or solfeggio scale. So as we are moving out of our devil's tuning, literally devil's interval with our heart, and we're tuning to 432, we aren't anchored anywhere. We don't have a place to call home. So if you, again, if this is interest of you, if you go back to the TikTok videos that I have made on this topic, there are literally thousands of comments expressing possession experiences, entity experiences, malevolent experiences, stress, anxiety, all of these negative things, because you aren't anchored anywhere. And that opens up your energy field, opens up your aura, and allows other energies, other beings, other entities to then come into your energy field and potentially usurp you, depending on where you're at in that meditative stage or what your vibration is. So along with that, 432 and the movement behind it has pretty much taken a stance against 528. And the 432 movement stems from a YouTube series called The Cosmic 432. And if you'd like to look that up, please look that up. It's by a man named Jamie Baturf. And it is a two-part series. In the first video, he comes up with a good amount of BS to give 432 some type of thing to stand on, even though the math that he's using is not valid, and the people that he is reaching out to saying that they back up 432, one didn't reach out to, and neither did they back it up, which that is confirmed by Dr. Horowitz, as he has a direct relationship with the mathematicians and scientists that Jamie Baturf said were supporting him, because they supported 528 and are in the book of 528 and have no resonance with 432. And then the second part of that video, they also claim to make an entire new solfeggio scale based off of 432. And then the rest of the video is about why you should listen to 432 instead of 528. So that is the reason that I hold the bias that I do against 432, and that I speak my message in the way that I do, and that I preach 528, because it really has just like an unfathomable amount of healing like property. So moving on 432 and 440 into what I tune my music to, how we can then anchor ourselves into our heart center, and kind of why this is so important, specifically in the time that we're in right now, as we're all moving into our heart space, is tuning that A4 note to 444 Hertz, which is, I think the angel number 444 is the messenger of love. I think it's been considered a couple different ways, but I think the first time I stumbled across it, that's what I saw, and that really resonated, because 444 then creates a gateway to tune us to 528. So to go back to the piano to explain that in a similar way that I did with 440, if this A4 note that was tuned to 440, if you tune this to 444, then when you go up to that C note, which before in 440 was 523, when it's tuned to 444, it is directly 528. So it is a direct gateway to tune us into the harmonious energy of 528. So bringing our heart center, bringing our energy into our heart center. And I think it also hits a couple solfeggio notes as well. I think it hits a lower perfect circle of sound. But to I have another screenshot here, but this is something that's been kind of going around TikTok, and it plays off of more of Nikola Tesla's kind of ideas that he has. And I just thought this was a great visual, and also a great visual of how 528 is still being censored. But if you could see here, if you recognize anything about this pattern, it looks similar to what I have back here, and also the Merkaba, but it also looks like the flower of life. And essentially what this screenshot is showing is that this is Nikola Tesla's kind of concept of the way that he viewed reality, is that this middle you is the consciousness, and then these frequencies around you are sending you energy and kind of helping sustain the consciousness that's in here. And I just thought this was cool because he used 444, but just to show again how things are getting censored in the world of 528. If you see this, C4 is 264. And when you double octaves, so if you go from C4 or C3 to C4, C4 to C5, it's always multiplied by 2. It's just how that's how humans have set up our music theory, is that whenever you go up an octave, so like F1 to F2, D2 to D3, if you kind of get that concept, it's always multiplied by 2. So if you take 264 divided or multiplied by 2, that's 528. However, when you look at C5, what he has down in this corner, it's not 528. So I just thought this was really interesting about how it's still not fully getting its reign when it's being shown, in such a, I mean, this is a very powerful image, including the frequencies and including like the 396 solfeggio. Like it is a very powerful image. So I just wanted to share that this stuff is I mean, it's rather primitive, as it's more of a quantum type of thinking. But it's, I mean, there are a lot of resources and evidence that go behind this, and that's not just through Dr. Horowitz, but that's looking back through just time and in history, back to Sumerian times, all the way to Greek times, through Egypt. I mean, biblical. I mean, it is in so many ways incorporated with things that we've had on this planet. So if I kind of move out of this discussion, I know it was kind of a long time. Does anybody have questions on kind of what I just introduced? Again, I know these are all big concepts, and that's I'm prepared for the questions. But I agree, Becca. It is very important that we get this out to musicians and even just people who are interested in this and are interested in frequency music, because tuning into 528 is going to be a very it's going to shift many things. Mason, I see that you said you're confused about 432 and 417. So the difference between 432 and 417 is 417 is a solfeggio note, and 432 is just the only thing it really has for it is it's an energy number because it adds up to 9. But 417 is directly on the solfeggio scale. Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm glad I explained that in a way that was hopefully understanding. I know that the math can get kind of confusing, and I hope that I don't confuse you in this next part, because this probably get a little confusing. Do headphones matter? So they don't necessarily matter, but if you put on headphones, you're going to have a much, it's going to take you into the environment. It's going to take you out of the environment that you're in and put you into the environment that whatever song or meditation you're listening to. So most of the music that I make, excuse me, I create on headphones, just because I've found that it's much easier for me to get into the environment and to stay in that environment and create within that environment with headphones on. And it helps pick up other frequencies depending on which speakers you're using, because I use a lot of lower frequencies in my music as well. But they're not necessarily needed, just more helpful to tune you into that environment. So got about 20 minutes left. That's pretty good timing, actually. So I can move us into explaining how to make some music now tuned to this frequency, now that we understand some concepts behind why it is as important as it is. And very specifically at this time on this planet, why it is such a just an important thing to be conscious of. So something that I do in my music, and I've been doing this for a while, is I put the frequencies in right away. But I think in order, I need to put these over here. All of your beautiful faces are in my way. So I will just play 528 to start this off. And I'm going to make sure that you can all hear this. Didn't have this up yet. Okay, somebody let me know in the chat if you can hear this frequency? You can hear it? Okay. For some reason I can't, but that's okay. So that is 528 Hertz. And yeah, it's kind of basic frequency. And most of my music, this album and before only had this frequency in there. Again, this is just the pure tone of 528. But something I learned and started to experiment with and just like test out is what happens if you add other frequencies into that mix and start to just build on top of each other and see if you can further the effect of the top frequency, creating like layers, if you imagine like a foundation for something to stand on top of. So if I take this out of here, these 5 frequencies are just an octave stack. So that C5 is 528. This is just C4, C3, C2, and C1, all standing on top of each other. And these 2 notes at the bottom have very important resonances, and I use 33 Hertz a lot. If you go to lunarsite.com, I think is where the list of frequencies and what they do is at. 33 Hertz is compared to Christ consciousness and has been compared to that for a while. So if I play these together, you can kind of hear what this stack sounds like. This might be a little intense, so if you have your headphones loud, I'd recommend turning them down a little bit. So this is, again, a stack of C when tuned to A4, or A4 equals 444. And it's just a stack of the 5 octaves on top of each other, accentuating 528 at the top of that. And something I found that was really cool and added a really kind of depth factor to the frequencies in there. But something that was introduced in the book of 528 that I started to experiment is this frequency, 88.8 Hertz, which I can just play this by itself. You can see it's not necessarily in tune with 444, which isn't bad. You don't need everything to be exactly in tune, because whenever you add any time-based effects like a delay or sometimes a reverb, depending, or like an echo, it's actually detuning your sound. So perfectly in tune isn't even necessarily a thing, but as close as you can get it is good. But the reason that I added in this frequency is because of the interaction between these 2 frequencies, 528 and 88.8. So if I can bring up my calculator here just to show you, it's not gonna come on screen, I gotta go like this. So if I take 528 and divide it by 88.8, unfortunately, Apple has a really small calculator, but it creates an infinitely generating integer, and that this number will infinitely repeat, essentially creating like a portal or a frequency, a vibration that just continues to regenerate itself based off of the interaction between 528 and 88.8. So again, if I can, I'll play this frequency stack for you just with the octaves, and then I'll add in 88.8 to show you kind of the slight difference, but then I'll go a step further and kind of explain why. So this is the octaves. if I add in 88.8, listen to how it starts to add itself in and interact with the different wavelengths. These are two different wavelengths going at two different speeds. Again, for some reason I can't hear. I don't know why I can't hear, but if you hear in that, it kind of, you can hear that they start to interact and that these wavelengths start to bounce off each other, and that integer starts to be created, and it like creates this stack. It like molds together this stack of frequencies, and it's like an infinitely looping interaction with not only 88.8, but I've been doing math because I've stumbled across another thing, again, that I'll speak about in maybe my next one. But that this 88.8 also interacts with 33 Hertz. It also interacts with 66, 132, and 264, creating infinitely generating numbers that, you know, in my experience, I've compared them similarly to a portal, which allow you to kind of step into that portal and essentially multidimensional travel. And with this frequency stack, since you're tuning into your heart space, it allows you to multidimensional travel to your heart space and help anchor you there while in that experience. Which again, crazy concept, but I would highly recommend just meditating to any of this, or also including if there's any type of plant medicine journeys that you feel called on. Frequencies are so powerful in every single setting, and just kind of like unfathomably important in those ways. So if I can quick pop up the chat to see if anybody has questions on this. I would love anybody to have any questions on this. I know that it is, again, kind of like a quantum type thought, but it is, I mean, it really is such a powerful thing, all of these frequencies interacting together. And yeah, well, if we don't have, Meditation Monday, excuse me. We're going to be hosting Meditation Monday on Monday. That's today. That'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that's pretty much always at 4 p.m. Eastern time every single Monday. Going to be struggling to get this Meditation Monday finished today, but we will get there. So now that we got 15 minutes left, and seems like nobody's got any questions. I hope I'm explaining this all in an understandable way, or at least a moderately understandable way. So we kind of understand a basic kind of background on 528 and why music isn't being tuned to 528 right now, and why we learned how to tune to 528, how to use frequencies inside of an environment of like a musical environment. And this is something you can do in GarageBand, Pro Tools, Logic. I can even quickly show you how I make these. So this is just, these are Waves plugins, and Waves is a kind of like a plugin seller. But all I do to create this is I just take a signal generator, which looks like this, and just type in 528. Oh, whoops. I got to hit enter. Yeah, and then just hit on. I'm going to turn it down. It'll probably be loud. But that's 528. Oh, my speakers are back on. Yay. And so that's essentially what I did for all of these frequencies. And then I just recorded them for 2 hours so that I could have 2-hour length versions of them. But frequencies are rather easy to create. This is something you can do. You don't need a music software. They sell free signal generators online and on your phone. So if you'd like to sleep to these frequencies, which is something I would highly recommend, if you can sleep to 528, it is going to greatly enhance your sleep, the way you get to sleep, your dreams, the way you wake up, the meditation when you wake up. I mean, it influences so many things. So I'd highly recommend, whether that's just the frequency of 528 or signal generator. Again, whether you sleep or whether you're working or doing anything, it's something I have on constantly and have had on constantly for probably like 15 to 16 months. So that's very much a high recommendation is just to tune yourself to the pure frequency of 528, because it has so many, there's so many powerful healing tendencies. So now we got all that out of the way. We know why to tune to 528, and then kind of the basic frequencies that'll be in here. So we can kind of create something based off of that. I think something I wanted to introduce here, I don't know how many musicians are in here, but if there are new people that are coming into kind of the music scene, creating music, it is a little easier than you think. And that's something that took me a while to figure out, because I tried to make everything so hard and complicated and do all of these things. And it's music is music, and the world that we're moving into now, it doesn't matter how you make the song. It more so matters if somebody's listening to it and if they resonate with it. But a good 95% of the music that you're hearing on radio waves or on Spotify or anything is really created out of loops or samples, which is something in the music world people are like, you know, don't make music with samples, but that's kind of bogus because people are making so much money off of creating sample packs, and that's something I'm even interested in. But it's a way to kind of catalyst a vibration that you can move into, or catalyst kind of a creative mindset. So I wanted to create something from a sample pack that, I wanted to recreate a song that I made from a sample pack that took me 2 minutes to make, but again, became the reason that this exists behind me. So I felt it was a really cool way to show, again, how simple it is to make music, how quickly you can create music, but also how important that 2 minute creative mindset can be, and how influential it can be. So if I go over here, this is just a random sample pack that got dropped in February of 2020. You can see it's a free sample pack too. So this was given out to a lot of people, probably only like 20 samples. But to get us started off here, I think I'm using this one. So if anybody recognizes that might sound familiar. So I can throw this in here. I have my Zoom stuff. Zoom stuff has to get out of the way, please. But so kind of starting off, so I'm gonna get a loop going and then set the tempo. I guess I could say I'm creating an Ableton. If you don't know what this software is, this can be done in any digital audio workstation though. Kind of got it up to tempo. I usually like to name my samples just so if I can name it, there we go. Just so I can remember what key it's in. And probably tame the low end a little bit because that bass is doing something. Let me know if I have feedback on my microphone too. I don't know if that's pulling through. Hopefully I'm good. Okay, thank you, Melissa. Kind of dug this down. And so for those of you that have heard the song, it's already kind of sounding like the Kingdom. And you can just take this, drop it down to 3, throw in this drum loop. It's a little too fast for what it was sounding like. So what I just did is I slowed it down. So I put it in halftime. Sound a little similar to what the Kingdom was, but the Kingdom actually is, I'm going off of like memory here. But all I'm kind of doing is chopping up the sample that I got from this pack. We have that. Kind of just putting this together. Probably this on just take a second to get this all out. But for those of you who've heard this song before, you're seeing how it's coming together here. Here. Check this out. Now we kind of have the drum loop. This is the This is pretty similar to the drum loop that is in the song. I like to put up other stuff just to keep my mind organized.
Josh, can you turn up your just can you turn your? It's hard to hear your voice right now. So
okay, I can turn the music down.
Yes.
Thank you. Just a little bit better. I can turn this up just a bit. But yeah, so basically that was just I did a couple quick chops, and on top of this, I only pitched this sample down 3 semitones, which is just taking it down 3 keys on the piano. And this pretty much is already the song that I created. The only other thing that I added in the original session, which again, this song took me like a good 2 minutes to make, is I just added in this fill. Push this down a little bit. Here, maybe pitch this down a little bit. So now we kind of have a basis. Again, that came from a sample pack. Came from something that was free and available to everybody. Now we have a basic kind of foundation to start building on top of, which is kind of the main goal for this looping session, which is how I start off most of my songs. Just creating the basic core idea for what I want to be moving towards. And then I kind of move into some processing, make it sound a little bit more unique, sound a little bit more like how I want to sound it, or how I want it to sound. So I can do some processing on these drums really quickly. Got about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. Just a little tiny compression. So there's even, so for those of you who are new, I guess, newer to music production, if you can hear on this drum, there's like a weird top high frequency. This is something I had to deal with when I created this song. So just to introduce you to a little bit of the black magic that music production is, we can take this thing called Isotope Rx, which I only have I have a cheap version, and I can put this on here. It's gonna make my computer lag, but you can hear how those high frequencies are gone as compared to, it's always like kind of choppy, they're like clicky, almost like phase poppy, where this just kind of takes it off. And this is something that you can just quick freeze the track if that's the effect you're looking for. I don't know if I did this on the actual original song. Then you can quick flatten that. And then if I mute this, now I have a drum loop without those really annoying top crunches. You can throw these on there. So now we have a basic drum loop here that I've done some processing on to make it my own. Make it interesting enough. So now to kind of move into making this more of my song, to put more of my own taste on it. If I go to my prep project here. Ooh, I meant to do this first. So something that I found really important with meditation music, and this can be brought into any type of genre, but very importantly, meditation music, is the integration of sound effects and kind of like ambient environments. So I just wanted to introduce everybody to the Kingdom sound effects, which sound like this. I think we have a filter or something. It's really quiet. Why are you quiet? There we go. And I use this specific stack of ambience in a lot of my music, but for anybody that is looking into creation, would highly recommend just going out, recording your backyard. This is one of my backyards. My backyard on August 7th, 2019. Or recording anywhere that you are, because you'll create just amazing settings. And really what you're doing as a music creator is you're creating an environment, you're creating an experience for the listener, and having ambient environments, ambient settings really help create that setting and create the overall texture for what you're moving into. So now if I add in the sound effects with the song, kind of hear how they're now in the background a little bit. Another thing we can do is we can side change this. sidechain is essentially taking, it's just using a sidechain with a compressor, but using an external source. So I'm using this drum track to trigger an effect on this track. So every time my drum track hits, it is triggering this compressor on my sound effect track, which is then ducking or compressing the sound every time that the drum comes through. So if I put this down, make this really obvious, you can hear how, and you can see and you can hear how the forest and all these sounds are going up and down. You can also make this go to just the kick. So that's only happening when the kick goes down. But this is an effect I also use in my frequencies and percussion loops, synthesizers. It's something that helps create space inside of the mix. So again, if I take this off, there's no movement happening here, kind of just stagnant forest. But then again, adding this in, you start to hear this movement. If I can do this back and forth with the original song. Add this in, listen for the birds. Kind of rise and fall with the song. Again, this is something you can do with frequencies, something I do with all my frequencies to help create room. Because again, you're going for that end product, that end finished mix, which is something that I will get into kind of at the end, but kind of just thinking forward, getting prepared for that mix and prepared for the final export. So we have sound effects. We kind of have a bass here. I think something that I was going to add in, I was going to add in a piano just to show what kind of like a quick live add in here. And the reason I wanted to start with samples is I wanted to show that you don't need to know how to play the piano in order to create music. You really don't even need, massive music theory knowledge. It's more of how can you use what you have at your disposal to create. So I've created kind of this basic thing, but now I want to kind of add a little bit more of the piano to accentuate it over the bass. So that's something I'll just like quickly add in just to show that very much so is also part of the creation process if you choose to make it so. But if I have this kind of loop from the back, I think it's these notes. I don't know, I guess I'll find out. Oh, it's, oh yeah. Hold on. I hear this. Nope. Yeah. But you can hear how that adds just a little bit more, kind of building up more in the layers. And you can process that and bring out the sound a little bit more. And then if I want to kind of quickly add a bass in here too to help build on top of this, because kind of the way that I work, the way that I think maybe not everybody works, but to kind of get a foundational idea down is if you stay in this loop right here and build up the loop as much as you can. That'll really help for when you move out of the loop and kind of start working on the arrangement, because the more you have inside of this loop, the more that you can kind of break apart and make new sections out of. So I think the bass on this is really really simple, but figure out what key I'm in. G down to, oh, D. Okay, this is what I was doing. So I kind of just record those on the MIDI, even though that messed up, I can duplicate that. And this is something you don't even need a MIDI keyboard for. This is something you can use your keyboard and actually play these in. So if I hit, I think it's M, I'm now using my keyboard to play all these notes. And that's something you can do in other softwares as well. So if I just line these up with where the picks are. that's kind of a basic bass here. Change color, because why not? If I want to bring that out a little bit more, again, I can process that. I'm using SoundToys plugins. These plugins are kind of expensive, but just kind of adding things on top of the original instruments you create to make it your own sound to help do that processing. So again, this is without on the bass, still kind of like a low tone, but with the decapitator, which is an amazing plugin. You can start to hear how this gets brought out a little bit more. And then this in the mix. I'm not even clipping it too, I guess. But so you can kind of hear how our overall kind of sound is coming together here. I think really all we need now is to add in the final finishing touches elements that I added in. So this is something that I added in a lot post of the song, or a lot later after the song. Just took me a while to make. But just to show the simplicity of things you can be adding into your production. This is just me singing with auto-tune. So if you hear this in the background, I just adding more layers. Which is something I think is important in music. It's definitely simplicity, but layers help a lot with helping get emotions out. So another thing that I put in is like a tuning fork. So this guy, if you've heard any of my music and recognize that sound, that's what that is. Kind of help with transitions to help go from one section to the next section. If you're thinking about arrangement, sometimes these can lead up. So I can show you an example of that as well, just to add to that transition. This can be also done with noise too. If you imagine like white noise, that's also a very useful thing for transitions like this, but just to give you kind of a concept, kind of hear how this builds up here. So that kind of enables the concept of transitions, and that'll be very applicable as we move into kind of arranging and laying up the foundation. And really the only other thing that this song needs is some animals in it. So if we add in the animals and kind of let them speak here. Maybe compress it a little bit, so kind of quiet. We're going to talk about what I'm adding here. What I have down here is, these are called auxiliary sends, or aux returns, been called kind of both, but you send and return from them. So for like reverbs and delays and different effects that you don't necessarily want to put on the direct sound source. So you want the sound source to sound as normal and as original as you prefer it. You can use these aux sends, which kind of duplicate the sound source and send it out to this aux send, which will then, you can put, like I have a delay effect here, that will then create that delay effect. So if we listen to this before, this has effects on here. So we'll go without any effects and just a compressor. You see how that's very dry. If we add on some reverb, here that kind of puts it into a space. And now with this delay, you see I'm just adjusting these sends here, which are going to the correlated numbers, or sorry, letters down here. Oh, I gotta change this from reverse to forward. Now you can see how that delay has been added from the output here. And then as you kind of all build on top of each other, you get a bunch of different sounds kind of going to these sends. And kind of create a bunch, it's like creating a separate mix of all these instruments in these kind of effect sends. So I have like a piano going here. I can send this sample here as well. I have the animals going there as well. And then you can kind of see the mix that gets created on here, which is all just kind of like the delay stuff. And this is very helpful if you're mixing music. I'd say a vast majority of music, or sorry, not mixing music, mixing vocals. A vast majority, if not all vocals, have reverb, delay, some sort of compression that compression usually happens on the actual channel. As you can see, I'm compressing here. Another instance of that compression would be something like this. Kind of adding these different vintage compressors on top of each other, and to build chains. So you can build chains of compression. Compression is kind of its whole own topic. But when you're using vocals, you're most likely going to be using reverb and delay on those aux sends. So I think that's kind of an important thing to know about, just to help create an environment for that voice to exist in, whether it's your voice or another voice you're mixing, as well as instruments, as well as the tuning fork. I put tuning forks into reverbs as well, and delays, and especially ambient stuff. I think ambient is important to kind of like mix in. I usually do like a bunch of delays on like birds, so the birds are delaying everywhere, and I think that's kind of an area where you can start to experiment and start to really get creative, is playing with the aux sends and creating different stuff on top of that. If anybody has any questions about this type of kind of creation, I can start moving into kind of the finishing part of what, you know, we're over time, I apologize. But if anybody has questions on the kind of creation process, kind of like the loop idea, I can answer those. Otherwise, I can just do a quick kind of wrap up of on just like exporting, maybe doing like a quick mix and what that process looks like. Thank you, Lala. Thank you for being here. Ooh, that's a great question, Mason. That is a great question. So there are a few different sites. And if you are looking for samples, look for royalty-free samples, royalty-free. Because if it is not royalty-free, they can potentially pick you up on copyright. And if you release that song, then they can do all their legal BS and fine you for that. But if it is royalty-free, which a good amount of samples are, and they will say if they're royalty-free, then you have the ability to use them in all your production, the ability to post them commercially, unless it's stated before. And if you're taking samples from vinyl, don't do that until you have money, because those are expensive, very, very expensive. But I guess I can show a couple sound sources here. I have to pull it up over here. My favorite one is called looperman.com. And I can pull this up on the screen here. And this is all royalty-free samples, all free. And there's some people on here that'll be like, oh, like, you know, you have to pay me or whatever. Then I don't take from them, but it's supposed to be all royalty-free, all organized. The main page is posted recently. So these are just, you know, different loops that people have posted today. But then you can go to, that's not showing me the categories. But you can go to categories and you can choose all these different categories, genres. They have different tags to kind of choose the loop that you're looking for. This can also go into, so this is a great place for free random loops. One of the places that I use that's more for like professional loops is Splice. I guess I wouldn't necessarily say professional loops, but more organized loops is Splice. And this is a paid subscription. But you get access to pretty much an ongoing updated sound library where they're posting sometimes daily, most times weekly, these updated sound packs, where then you can go into these sound packs and obviously you see all these different sounds and you can organize them. So if I want a loop, if I'm looking for, let's say, a drum groove, which I don't know if they have drums in here, let's go for chords. So I'm looking for chords here. Great options. You can go and download this. You can see we have credits. And so I highly recommend Splice as well. Splice is very much so used by a lot of other artists. So I've heard a lot of different songs that have been created off of samples on here. So that's kind of the one downside you get kind of moving into a sample world, is that you know, other people have access to those sounds, especially if you're using free sounds, free sample packs that you found on the internet. Other people have access to those, and that's something you kind of subscribe to. I kind of see that in a way of, if anybody remembers like the early 2010 like kind of mixtape era, if anybody was into that era, it was kind of a time where, you know, somebody would make a remix of a song, or they'd sample a song, make a remix, and then 10 to 15 other artists would rap on that song, rap on that remix. And it kind of became like a competition of, you know, who has the best remix of this one beat. So in a way, it's similar to that, who has this best remix of the one sample. So it's more competitive in that way, and I enjoy it. I love having a kind of the ability to have samples on deck. But if you are using samples, that's just something you should be aware of and be prepared for, because it's already happened to me. Somebody else has used my sample and posted on Spotify. Just what it is. But I highly recommend Looperman. Looperman is a great place for that, Mason, and Splices as well. You can even just go to like Reddit. Reddit has like a free drum kit subreddit. They also have music sample subreddit that people just randomly post stuff in there. Another amazing place would be Cymatics, cymatics.fm. They give away a lot of free sample packs and have a lot of really high quality samples in their work. So yes, samples are good. Samples are so good. So good. There's so many producers out there that are just like, you know, no, don't do that. You have to make everything from the piano, and that's the only thing you can do. They're just salty because people make better songs than them with samples, and they don't want to use samples. Because at the end of the day, you know, 95% of the listeners aren't going to know how anything was created. They're just going to want to hear the song, and they're just going to want to listen to it. So you kind of have to keep that in mind as a producer as well. As you could spend 50 days on a song and nobody's going to listen to it. Whereas this song, I literally made this song in 2 minutes on the studio floor of my friend's studio, and then like wrote the song when I was driving to school. And again, it manifests into this. So music is simple. It can be simple. It can be complex. It's more about what your energy is and how you wish to instrument your energy into the medium that you're using to create that energy with. Hopefully that made sense. Thank you for coming in here, Kat. I love you. If anybody else has questions about samples or, again, this creation thing, I can just quickly move into kind of like working onto an export. I think that's just a quick little important thing. But what I guess I can quick say about mixing and even kind of like processing. So to define processing, me putting on this plugin is something like processing, or me like kind of using an EQ to take out the low end on this and adding on like reverb and distortion. That's processing. So adjusting the original source sound and adding stuff on top of this. Yes, of course, Mason. Thank you for being here. And thank you for that question too. That was a really good question. Something I wanted to talk about. So I'm glad you asked that. So yeah, we kind of have, imagine that this song is laid out. We have like 2 minutes of this song, then that would just happen by, if you want to create differences, you can drag this out, pitch this down, maybe slide it out. Really creepy intro, but you know, you kind of get the concept. You can kind of duplicate these together. Maybe the song wants to enter here. So create the entrance here. Now we have a verse here. Now if we want to get to like a chorus, we can add in the bass and the piano here. If I get this out of here, we can use the tuning fork to transition us into the chorus. Maybe bring in the vocal pad at the chorus as well. We got to have the fill to transition us into that chorus. So if we want to go from verse to chorus, sound like this. Hold on, we got to get these. We got to have the animals introduce us. Sorry, everybody. I tried to click off on my loop, but it hit the zoom button. Love that. So that's kind of the concept of arranging, just however you envision the song happening, and then going around that and processing, doing individual automation to help, you know, things transition. If I want this to maybe build up a little bit, I can create a little build, even though I probably wouldn't want this, but just to kind of give that concept. Maybe everything drops out before we go into the drop. So kind of creating these more transitional areas. You can add in little markers too, says that this is the chorus. And then that's kind of the concept of arranging. So then if you want to get into the mix, again, my mix is going to be a little different because I have the volume adjusted down here. But a mix is exactly that. You are mixing all of these elements together to create a song that is under 0 dB in volume. So you have to mix all of these elements together to find a balance, again, a mix of these elements working together in harmony inside of this time-space environment. So that I'm going to do kind of like a, and again, I have this lower, so it's not going to appear like it's clipping, but here, if I quick bring this up, I can show you what clipping is. See, that's super loud, but you can also see how this is red. So what the red means is that there is distortion happening on the output channel or the master channel, so that your signal is more intense than its ability to reproduce. So instead of allowing the whole frequency to go up, it cuts it off and clips it, creating a square wave, which then distorts the sound and creates kind of a dissonant sound. It's something that's jarring to the ear. Like if in your car, if you've ever listened to like a song with a lot of bass, you feel the rattle in your car. It's kind of like rattling, but without your car rattling. That's how I envision clipping. It's like the weird distortions on top of that. So obviously you don't want that to happen. So that's something that, you know, I have the bass really loud here. So I can maybe bring down the drums just a little bit. I realized that I compressed the animals a little bit, so I'll bring them down as well. And then, so these frequencies, I'll probably have to address that. Let me just check the mix. So we're still clipping a little bit. Something I think that is important to address though with the frequencies is, especially with like 33 Hertz and 66 Hertz, those are very much so in the low end, and 88.8 Hertz too. And the low end kind of makes up this area on our frequency spectrum. So if we have, you know, a massive frequency, if I can even just play these frequencies, you can see how much space is already being taken up by these frequencies, and they're ducking because of the drums. So you have to try and find a way to mix your musical instruments, your musical elements into this space, while also incorporating these, making them somewhat audible, and using them to enhance the song instead of take away from it and kind of like be annoying. So if I'm going to turn down this again so it's not blasting. But now if we look at this mix with everything in there, see how the frequencies are still here, but this kicks on top. We can see how this will change once the 808 gets introduced. So the 808 is going to be sitting right around here. I think below 808, yeah. So here, this goes up. You see how this is really close, 33 Hertz. And the top one is really close. It's right, kind of like right in between 66 and 88.8. This is the reason that I do side chaining, to help create that room, to help just give it to help give the musical elements a little bit more room to cut through. But that even might be something where you mix down the frequencies to a volume where they're more just felt instead of like really audible. Same thing kind of with sound effects. And this is kind of more like advanced, but you can start like messing with the EQ. So let's say the sample has a really kind of more intense mid end. You can kind of duck that down a little bit to add more room for maybe these drums. Maybe the snare is a little bit too much on here, so I can turn this down. But it's just kind of like mixing these all together, making micro adjustments on each different element that you have in order for this final kind of mix, this kind of final environment that you have here to be balanced and well reproduced on any type of medium, because it's going to sound a lot different on your phone compared to these speakers, compared to your car, compared to a single mono Bluetooth speaker, compared to headphones, compared to over-the-ear headphones. It's going to sound different everywhere. So the best you can do to create a balanced environment, a balanced mix, it is going to sound better in those better environments. So if I check this here now again, I noticed that my tuning fork is a little bit loud. It's kind of just a basic thing, but now if I bring this up, this might be loud. Hopefully it's not loud, everybody. Sorry. Yeah, we're under 0. So it's not a perfect mix, but now we aren't clipping and our elements are all kind of balanced. So now that we've gotten the mix, we've got it at a general place. Now moving into exporting, just in case we had missed a place that was in that mix, because this would be something like 2.5 minutes. If there's like one little place where it's clipping and we happen to miss that, something we can do on the export is we can put on something called a limiter. There's a lot of different exporting plugins, but basic concept is like a limiter, which will say you can't go past this specific volume. So by taking this out ceiling, moving it down to -0.1, that says that the volume will not rise over -0.1. So it won't get to 0, it won't get to 0.1, it won't clip. It'll stay right under there. And if you haven't mixed beforehand, then this can really mix up your mix, can really create some chaos with a lot of compression, as this is like a really intense compressor. But it's also a way to save yourself when you're uploading stuff. And as you adjust this threshold, this will compress more, compress less as you go up. I think this is something that is really important on a final master if you're uploading the song. For somebody, let's say like Mason, if you're doing like a vocal mix to send me like a mix, this isn't something you would put on your master channel, as this is something that's like you're prepping it for upload. If you put a mix on, or if you put like a limiter on the final master channel, and then it's going to be mixed into something else that's kind of like already compressing, already processing and creating a dynamic shift in the original audio. So if you're exporting to send to somebody, I wouldn't recommend putting on a limiter. Just do that mix in the main, the original spot. But again, if this is something you're uploading, I think a limiter is something that is important. And again, it depends on where you're uploading. So if you're uploading to Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Pandora, they all have different limiting kind of algorithms. They all have different specs that they prefer for you to upload. So different LUFS, which is a loudness kind of unity full scale, or DBFS. There's a lot of kind of audio meters that they have kind of specs for. So mastering within itself is its own kind of realm. So that's something you need to be aware of as you're doing kind of your final master for the dedicated streaming service or platform that you're choosing to upload your music to. Kind of a safe bet is somewhere around -1 dB. If you can get your final export to be around here, so -1, without keeping it there. So if you can have it like, if you can have the limiter at -0.1 and have the overall volume, the true peak volume of your song at -1, you're probably going to be sitting good for the majority of streaming services. YouTube does compression still on that, but SoundCloud will be good with that. I know Spotify does -1. Apple Music sometimes does -2, which is weird. But I thought that was important to touch on, because mastering for anybody that is out there is its own whole realm. But if you can kind of have just like a basic understanding, mastering is something that can be used for your benefit. But I know I'm kind of going on, everybody. I really I really can talk about this forever.
I think let's finish the recording in maybe under 10 minutes. And then if there's any little discussions after the recording, people are welcome to stick around. And we'll do a screenshot at the end of the recording. So if everyone can just stick around till then, if you're okay with that, we'll close it off then. But keep going, Josh. It's awesome.
I mean, thank you. I'm kind of at the end here. Other than that, besides like just the mastering, things you can do for organization wise. So if I go to like the export button here, you can kind of see how we can export in different formats. So if you're uploading to like SoundCloud or sending to anybody, again, for like a situation for you, Mason, sending in a WAV format, a .wav is, will keep the highest fidelity of the audio, whereas something like an MP3 will compress it together and create the smallest file that it can. So it has this algorithm where it smushes it to keep it as small and kind of make it as streamable as possible. A lot of streaming songs are MP3s, but a WAV format keeps the entire fidelity of the audio through something called pulse code modulation, which is a really in-depth algorithm that was created in the 90s to help kind of create this codex, I guess, of exporting. So if you're looking to save, space, MP3 is great, but I'd always recommend exporting in WAV just to keep the highest fidelity. Sample rate isn't something that should be messed with too much. Sample rate is something that determines how much frequencies are in the song that you're creating. So, what's the guy? His name starts with an N. It's something law that the sample rate contains 2 times the amount of frequencies that are within the bandwidth of the song. So for 44,100 samples, that means 22,050 frequencies. So the range of 20 hertz to 22,050 are the range that are going to be within a project with the sample rate of 44,100. If I go to 48,000, then that would be a range of 24,000 frequencies. So it's just kind of like times 2. And we aren't at a point really with any of our speaker systems, our headphone systems, even our ears, to perceive a difference in any of these besides going down. So I'd recommend staying at 44.1 until we have the ability, like a medium that can reproduce higher quality. I know like some Blu-ray is exported in 96K, but that's kind of very niche realm as of now, as we kind of move into that. I think the last thing is just like organization. So if I wanted to name this, I think a great way of naming, your files is like the date. This can even be done backwards if you have a different means of actually saving the file. So you could do like 2021 37 and then the name of this. And then like I store all my music in iTunes. So I would just take this, the way that I name my stuff is like this. And then I would take this, do an export of it, throw it into my iTunes, and then I kind of have like a file organization in there. But I think that's kind of all we got. I gave a brief introduction to 528 and the history of 528. Kind of ran you through what our tuning is currently and why 528 plays an important role in shifting that tuning, shifting that kind of perspective. Also introduce some frequencies and how frequencies interact within a time-space environment, kind of more predominantly in music, and also how to create within that kind of frequency environment. Simplicity of creation, simplicity of art and creation. Shout out to Maddie. And yeah, I mean, if there's anybody who has questions, I'd love to answer questions. And I hope this was informative. I hope this inspired anybody to create some music, because it's really not hard. Like, it's something that if you put a lot of time into and really, really work on growing and doing different things, something that you can really create beautiful things with, and, can do so many things. But it's also something that really, it's not as challenging as a lot of people make it, or make it seem to be. Everybody can make music at all times. So I'm hoping this inspired anybody out there to create in whatever way you can, whether that's in GarageBand or Audacity or on your phone. I know that they have phone programs that do music programming as well. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much.
Just to be mindful of the time between now and our next live event. For anybody here, please, if you do have questions, ask them away. Be mindful. We'll finish the recording soon. And maybe just before we get into the questions, Josh, is there anything that you want to plug for yourself, regular events in the community, Wave community, the 528 radio, anything
Yeah.
of that nature, please go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Becca, thank you for bringing up 528 radio. I will say that first. So for people who are looking for music that is tuned to 528, as a good 99.9% of the music that we've heard is not, there is this amazing software kind of program website that Dr. Horowitz has set up. Again, Dr. Horowitz is the Book of 528 author, and it's called 528radio.com. You can also get there through 528records.com. But essentially 528 radio is a conversion service where you can upload your waves or MP3s if you have ownership of that, or maybe not even ownership, but if you have that file, you can upload it to 528 radio, and you will get back a converted file from 440 to 444. So you'll be able to then have ownership of that file, but it'll also upload that file into the radio, the 528 radio. So anybody can go onto that radio and choose any genre and kind of listen to music that's already been tuned to 444 if you're looking to incorporate this type of listening into your life, which I'd highly recommend. 528 radio is kind of the home for 528 music as of this point. And that's where a vast majority of the 444 tuned music is. So I'd highly recommend that. Again, that's 528radio.com. If you are looking for any other type of 528 music, all of the music that I create is in 528, and I am Animal on all streaming services as well as SoundCloud. And then my social medias are The Animal Kingdom, and I believe it's The Animal Kingdom on YouTube as well. I post weekly meditations on Monday, so I'll be posting one. I'll be doing a live stream for one in a couple hours. I don't know if I'll be posting one because I still have a lot of work to do on it. But we do weekly meditations on Mondays at 4 p.m. EST. And then we have a wave community, which wave very much so is symbolic of kind of what I've introduced people to in this presentation. It's the concept that we are vibration, frequency, energy. That's what WAVE stands for. So this concept that vibration, frequency, and energy are primordial to this reality that we're in, and that we all kind of harness this concept that love is also integral to all of that, and creating community based around that, co-creative community. We all kind of create in there and share creations. We have something called a Wave Wednesday, which is showcasing our art. So I host kind of just a showcase on YouTube, and we showcase the art that was created within the community, showcase concepts that were introduced, different videos from other creators, and just kind of create a positive, benevolent environment for that. We're hoping that that's able to eventually, in collaboration with Happy Hearts House, then also incorporate kind of the younger generations and the creations that they bring, also give them a safe space to exist in and co-create with us in as well. So that is a Discord community that we have right now. I'd like to invite anybody here, if you're not a part of that Discord community, please join. I think that's something, if you look at my links, like on my Beacons page, there is a link on that as well, but I can also leave a link to that if anybody's interested.
We just posted a link in the chat, so yeah, it is there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the only other reference or link that I'd recommend is the Book of 528. Would highly recommend that book. The book literally changed my life in so many ways, not just because I was already like tuning my music to 528 and it gave me like a mission statement, but I mean the information that's introduced in that book is paradigm shifting, and in so many ways, in so many industries, in so many facets. Using discernment, you will learn something from that book, and will find something that you'll be able to carry with you. So I would highly recommend the Book of 528. And yeah, I think that's all. So grateful for this. Thank you all.
Thank you again, Josh. Just real quick, if there are people who want to be able to ask some questions, we'll just create an extra couple minutes, and then any additional conversation questions. Josh, did you want to stick around for a bit? You're pretty busy, so you got stuff that you need to do after this. You just let us know.
Yeah, if people have questions, I can answer some questions. I'm also way behind on today's meditation, so I do have to work on that. But I would love to answer questions if anybody does have those.
Okay. Was there any questions, maybe just, or even just any gratitude, if anybody wants to be able to express that, that's totally fine. So I think Josh did a great job of covering it today. So that was awesome. Cool. Carly, did you want to say something? Or, nope. No? Okay. Just putting that on. Okay. All right. Real quick, even just any gratitude, Rebecca, if you want to share anything.
Like, I'm Josh's biggest fan, obviously, but I think that everybody should join the Discord, because you're totally missing out on the real story of what 528 is and what Josh is doing. If you want to learn more, that's the place to be, because also we have Dr. Horowitz in the Discord family, and he is giving us like regular updates and newsletters into the work that he's doing to help us for the future. So if you want to know all about that and be involved in that, then the animal kingdom and the way of creation is exactly where you need to be. And also thank you, Josh, for everything, because you have helped me, my family grow so much, and this is just even more so. I'm going to go now because I have a monster at my feet, but thank you.
Love you, Becca. Thank you. Thank you so much. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Honesty. Whichever one is at your feet.
Okay. Anybody else, just any closing gratitude? Yeah, Amanda, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so you already know that I love you. And you did amazing. And this was like the best. I just want to let everyone know that finding Josh took my healing from like here all the way up here. It just blew everything completely open. So if any of this class affected you in any way, absolutely come join the Discord, come join his Patreon, do whatever you feel called to do to support him, because I will never stop telling everyone how amazing Josh is and how amazing his music is, because it just completely changed my life. And that's all. Love you. Bye.
I love you too, Amanda. Thank you.
I wanted to jump in with the gratitude. My daily meditations are sort of embraced by Josh's music, and that includes like whenever I create content for my job, I create sort of like his music sets the musical feeling that I sort of heart space that I get into. So one of the things that's been really profoundly impactful to me is how your music has helped me not only relax and sort of get in touch with my higher self and just communicate with my higher selves, but also doing yoga or creating a work environment where I really want to, create content that helps heal people. You're always on in the background, and it's helped, especially with all the stuff that, is up, all of the energies that we're sorting through these days. It's helped me maintain a higher baseline, progressively higher baseline moving forward. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much love and gratitude for you as well. And that's so beautiful. I'm so grateful I can help you, and I can help anybody in that way, because that's what got me into frequency music, is having that ability to work and create in a, like you said, a higher baseline. That's such a beautiful way to explain it. Thank you for that gratitude. I have so much gratitude for you as well. So much love.
Mason, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in after hearing what Melissa said. It sparked a memory that I had just the other night. I had put on my headphones and I had turned on Animal on Spotify, and I'm kind of seeing like maybe why it happened now, but I got into this flow and I worked for like 4 hours, and it's so cool just to know that like a frequency can kind of tap me into like the direction that I want to go. So I just want to thank you, Josh, for putting your music out there, because if it has such a loving effect on me, I can only imagine that's amplifying through everyone else too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so amazing that I was able to.
Yeah. Thank you also for all the tips you added.
Yes, thank you for the questions. I'm glad that I was able to. I would have forgotten about that sample thing, so I'm glad I was able to plug that for you or for anybody else in here that is interested in that. I think that's a very powerful resource. Thank you so much, Mason. So much love. I think something I can just like quick add in because Amanda brought it up, but I do have a Patreon as well, and through that Patreon I give like monthly meditations. I'm a little behind from this last month because March hit me like a wrecking ball. But I do monthly meditations. I do monthly backgrounds because I create a good majority of the art for my from my music artwork. I also do like 528 Hertz vibe spaces. So I create music live, and then the majority of the time I post those vibe spaces onto Patreon. Sometimes they get moved into like Meditation Mondays, but any kind of background content that I post on my YouTube also goes on my Patreon as well. And kind of, I have a few other concepts that'll be moving into the Patreon as this opens up. But I guess I hadn't mentioned that, so I wanted to mention that. Thank you, Amanda, for bringing that up and reminding me. But yeah, go 528.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect place to be able to end it. And any other comments and gratitude, please, by all means, go ahead and reach out to Josh. And all the links for that are posted into the Zoom chat. And you can also find it in the Discord as well. And we'll just conclude things here, and we'll finish off the recording, and then we'll do a little screenshot and everything there. So Josh, just any closing words, and then we'll stop the recording there.
I have so much gratitude. I love you all so much. Thank you for this space. Thank you for holding space for me. And yeah, just so much love. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again, Josh. Thank you to those of you watching in the future. And be sure to check out more through the Vibeo Festival. So finish the recording now. Cool. Awesome. All right. So let's just do a quick little